So some quick notes on the brown bag wines from last night. Started with the Rockford Black Shiraz. I think it was a 2-year-old vintage. Lots of energy, lots of bead. Still remains, I think, most of the Australian table's favourite sparkling red. I'm being kind of spoilt recently in the number that I've seen in the last few weeks, and loving every one of them, I have to say. The first bracket that we looked at in terms of wines happened to both be broken wood, one being the Graveyard 202 and the other one being the Block 207 from McLaren. The 02 Graveyard, I'm now determined to decant everything before we even bother looking at wines of this quality in the future, because it really just got better and better and better in the glass over about 2 hours before there really wasn't any of it left. Hunter Syrah, as it gets older, it just develops the most incredible agility and suppleness, which is absolutely fantastic and very seldom copied anywhere else in Australia or emulated. Top marks for that as a vintage as well. The 07 was really interesting. I wasn't as crazy about the nose as I was about the body of the wine. There was an interesting red berry core to it, which was very energized and really set it apart. I would never have guessed that as a McLaren Shiraz. Next bracket was St Henri 96 and 38902. 02 often gets forgotten in the Penfolds clan of wines, and here is an example of one. It was absolutely great. I think it was certainly nearing the zenith of its drinking window, but in really good form, supple, elevated, and really remarkably agile. The 96 St Henri was amazing. I think that Rob has had that wine since inception, and if you compare the 96 St Henri to the 98, I'm far more in favour of the 96 as they stand right now. I think that 96 is looking a lot more youthful and is showing far longer track, I think, potentially than the 98, which is quite interesting. Then the next bracket was Peppertree Grand Merlot 04. I think it's the best thing, for me it's the best thing they do out of Ratton Bully, the Ratton Bully vineyard. It's I think out of everything else that they produce, it's the one thing that always sort of stays in my mind as the thing that I prefer, and this was a great example of it. We then had a Rusden Black Guts 2000. Now, Black Guts, out of what I've drunk from the late 90s into current release 06, 07s, has a very definitive style and stamp about it. I want to say early Chris Ringland in style, but maybe that's the wrong call. But there's something about Black Guts that has a true and tried formula flowing through it, and this one didn't. This one was incredibly extracted, soft and plush to the point of being over too rich. It's a pity, but I would place that in the same bracket as things like late Shervingtons, some of the Molly Duca range as well can do that, and it's not something that I particularly love terribly much. Then we did Torbreck Factor 04. Certainly as an expression of the style, it's probably my favorite vintage at the moment of all of the 2000s, and it didn't disappoint. It's starting to become a mature wine, and you're starting to see some secondary maturation in the wine, which is really impressive. That wine has got at least a comfortable decade, even in our climate, to run, and I'm happy to keep drinking them all the way through. We then had, it got a little fuzzy after that, but my notes tell me Quinta de Naval 03, which is fantastic, and I think we're going to stick with the tradition at Brown Bag from now on of there being at least one port at the end of every night. We then had a refreshing Veuve Clicquot, which didn't disappoint. It's always good to have a cleanser at the end of the night. Then we had, by complete error, the Perrins Family Côte de Rhône Reserve 2010, which was good. I've been lucky enough to drink the last 4 vintages of that wine, and a little formulaic maybe, but you're seeing the same kind of style all the way through what they do at that price point anyway. Then we had a Schaffer Merlot, I think it was the 08, all of us were completely convinced it was a Shiraz, but it was that time of the night. Fantastic evening. Thanks, everybody.